All right, guys, we are ready for the next step in our assignment. So at this point, the materials you're going to need that chart you made. We're going to be focusing on the chart to help us with the different parts of the assignment. You're going to need your watercolors. You're going to be activating your cool colors if that's what you're using for the second step. If you're using the warm colors, you'll be activating your warm colors. You're going to need a container with clean water, and it's always a good idea to have a paper towel or napkin around to use. Okay, so we're ready to get started. And as we've talked about already, I used warm colors, following the colors from my chart, so we can see my use of warm colors in my tree. Some of my purples maybe got a little bit darker than they should have, but it's not the end of the world. I can go back in later and lighten those up. So we're seeing all of these nice warm colors used here. And now I'm going to be focusing on using these cool colors in the second half of my painting. So for the sky and the land. Okay, so we're going to get started. And just like we did with our last painting, we're going to be focusing on blending these colors so that we're getting more than one value in each section that we're painting. Okay, so you can go ahead and follow along with me, watch what I'm doing, and then give it a try for yourself. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to start with a really deep, dark purple. And if you put your crayon on thick enough, you'll notice that the crayon repels the watercolor. That's because this is called a wax resist technique, and your crayons are wax, essentially, colored wax, so it should repel the water. I'm just going to do this very deep, dark line of purple. And you don't have to do your painting this way, even if you're using the cool colors. Just because I'm using purple here does not mean that you need to use purple here. Each artist is different, so it's really your choice which cool color you're using. Just make sure you're focusing on your cool colors if you did warm colors on top, okay? And just like before, I'm gonna work on mixing some of my colors together. So I'm actually just coming back in with a little bit of water right now. The more water we have, the lighter the color becomes. The less water we have on it, the darker the color is, or the more saturated the color is. I'm gonna work some blue in here to create some blue-violet along the edge here. Okay, so remember, one of our goals is to represent all of the cool colors throughout the bottom, just like we had all of the warm colors represented in the top, or vice versa. So if you did your cool colors on top and the leaves, that's fine. Then you're going to make sure you represent all of your warm colors along the bottom, okay? So you just want to be very thoughtful about that. Now, if you put that wax on thickly, you should be able to paint the next section before the first one dries. If you didn't put that on thickly, you may encounter some problems. So I see that I got a little bit of green, maybe up into this area where I don't want it, so I'm just going to take my paper towel and dab that off gently. You could also, again, use a dry brush to pick that color up as well. I'm going to do a little bit more blue and switch to a smaller brush. It's never a bad idea to have more than one brush. I'm going to do a little bit more blue right in this area. because in my head, I'm imagining there might be a shadow from that tree back there. So I'm going to do a little bit more blue on each side. So we've got some violet, we've got some blue violet happening, we've got some blue green, variations of blue green. So we're looking for more than one value or color in each of these sections, just to make it more interesting than having just a solid color in each one. And I'm going to go back in again with my smaller brush. I'm going to make sure it's clean, not super wet. I'm going to take some of this dark violet and work that back up in. So I want this area right by my warm colors to be really dark and cool. And the paper is still wet, so it should kind of pull that color into the other areas so I don't get too much of a solid line. If the paper is dry, I'll probably end up with a solid line, but I'm pretty confident that there's still some moisture in the paper. Just spread that out. And I might go back in and do, again with my tinier brush, maybe a line of blue right along the edge here. Nice dark blue. So refer back to your chart if you're thinking about what colors should I do. Make sure you're using each color that was on your chart. So I'm just going to continue to work until I have this entire area painted in. I'm going to shift this up on the screen so that you can see the bottom of it. And I'm going to lay this part flat here. And I'm just going to work till it's done. So I've just added my yellow there. Yellow is obviously a warm color. So I need to make sure that it is mixing with my green and becoming yellow-green and not staying yellow, okay? So I am mixing my colors on my paper, so just be aware that that color has to get mixed out by adding the green in. And don't forget, you can use that dry brush trick that I taught you in the other video, if you stuck around for that, to pick up any puddles of water you may be creating. So in this section, what I'm doing is I am working on creating a variation of different blues by using more and less water. So in this area here, At the top I have the darker blue, and down here I have the lighter blue where I just used water. So that's also something you can do to create variation in color, is just think about how much water you're adding to your painting. Again, I'm using a warm color, so I've got to make sure that I really blend this and don't end up with just a big spot of yellow. So I'm going to make sure that I work my green in there to get that yellow-green color. So in these paintings, it's the yellow in the cool colors, making the yellow-green that you've got to be careful with. And in the warm colors, it's the red-violet that you have to be careful with, because if you get too much violet, it tends to look, in the red-violet, it tends to look more like a cool color. And if you get too much yellow in the yellow-green, it's going to look more like a warm color. So be careful with that. And of course, you can always go back in and paint if once it dries, you see that it's looking too warm. Again, don't forget that trick. If you have too much water, wipe your brush dry with your paper towel, pick up some of that extra water, squeeze it out on your paper towel. I'm also trying to go in and make sure that I'm covering up any little bits of white that might be peeking through in my painting. Looks like I might have gotten a little bit out, so I'm just going to dab with my paper towel. Okay, so I've finished this up, and you can see that I have used all of the cool colors that I had on my chart. I have also incorporated into my painting, so they're all represented. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and I see one little spot I missed. Make sure you don't do that on your paper. And once it's dry, we'll come back and we'll do the final step in our painting. Okay, so I'll see you soon for our last step.